Hello everybody, it's Toridori here, and today I'm bringing you a different video from the usual Let's Play. We're going to be looking into details, theories and rumours about the upcoming Five Nights at Freddy's 4. Now, some of the things I'm going to talk about are my own ideas as to what the game will entail. They might seem a little far-fetched at times, but stick with me on this. I'm guessing most people watching this video know the Five Nights at Freddy's series, so I won't go over every little bit of detail about past games unless it's significant to certain theories and ideas. So, the announcement of Five Nights at Freddy's 4 came as a bit of a surprise to me, and I'm sure many other people. I'd assumed, given the ending to the third game, that Scott Cawthon was finally hanging up Freddy's hat and calling it a day. He even updated his website with an image of the famous hat sat in a spotlight. This gave me the impression that Scott was trying to tell us this was the end for the series and we should move on. But just as we were getting used to the idea of no more creepy animatronics, Scott uploaded another image to his website. The spotlight again, but with no hat. Then a few weeks later, we got a far more disturbing image. At first glance, this appears to be Freddy Fazbear, but he looks very creepy to say the least. A damaged and dirty endoskeleton, drills for hands, and what appears to be miniature Freddys crawling out of his skin. This is the stuff of nightmares. In fact, the word nightmare seems to be the clue here. If we take a closer look at the bottom of the image and brighten it up, the word nightmare becomes visible. The same is true for the later images he released of Bonnie and Chica. Another thing to note on Bonnie and Chica's images are the words, "Was it me?" Now, if you go into the source code on Scott's website, you'll notice the numbers 8 and 7 crop up in place of letters. This most likely refers to the bite of 87, an incident that occurred in the year 1987 in which an animatronic bit a customer on the head, causing the loss of the frontal lobe of their brain. We are never told which animatronic inflicted the bite, so could the words "was it me" refer to this incident, and if so, does this mean we'll finally get answers to which animatronic it was? With the knowledge we have so far, what does this tell us about the story of the supposed final chapter of Five Nights at Freddy's? My personal theory is that the fourth game will take place in somebody's dreams, hence the word nightmare. The reason these animatronics look so twisted and evil is because they are part of a very bad dream or series of dreams. But whose dreams could it be? Well, my next theory relates to the numbers 8 and 7 found in the source code. Could it possibly be the victim of the bite of 87? Now before you say, how can it be the victim? They had half of their brain destroyed or something like that. Let me remind you of something Phone Guy says to you on night 1 in the first game.
It's amazing that the human body can live without the frontal lobe, you know?
While this doesn't tell us how much brain function the victim had left after the incident, it does imply that he or she survived the attack. But was this person a child or an adult? One can argue that a child has a far more active imagination than an adult and could easily dream up a monster like the ones in these images, but let me once again refer to something Phone Guy says to you, this time on night 4 in Five Nights at Freddy's 2.
But the characters have been acting very unusual, almost aggressive towards the staff. They interact with the kids just fine, but when they encounter an adult, they just stare.
It could possibly be that an adult got too close to one of the animatronics and was bitten. Or I'm over-theorising and it was just some bratty kid, we don't know yet. If Five Nights at Freddy's 4 is not about the victim, it could easily be somebody who was a witness to the event. Imagine you're a kid having a great day out at Freddy Fazbear's pizzeria. Everything's going fine when suddenly you hear a scream and a loud crunch. You look over your shoulder and see an animatronic's mouth dripping with blood and the victim comatose on the floor, part of their head missing. I don't know about you guys, but that would definitely give me nightmares about these animatronics. Okay, now this is where my theorising goes right to crazy town. What if we were actually playing as Scott himself, or at least a character representing a part of Scott? He has let us know that while making the series, he suffered terribly from nightmares about the animatronics, particularly Bonnie. He even woke up at times convinced that Bonnie was hiding in his closet. It could be that after suffering from these dreams, Scott came up with the idea of another Five Nights at Freddy's game based solely on his own nightmares. This also gives me a few ideas for the location, but more on that later. Okay, so maybe it's not to do with dreams and I'm looking into the nightmare side of this too hard. But surely these things can't be real. They're much too creepy to have ever been part of a family pizzeria, or even have existed at all, right? Well, if you recall, at the end of Five Nights at Freddy's 3, a newspaper clipping states that Fazbear's Fright, the location in the third game, burnt to the ground, destroying most items with it. It also states that the few things that were recovered would be sold at public auction. What if some of these items included parts of the animatronics? Looking at the office area in Five Nights at Freddy's 3, we can see a box of animatronic parts, such as heads and accessories like Toy Bonnie's guitar. What if some crazed Freddy Fazbear fan bought as much of these parts at auction as he could, and rebuilt Freddy and the gang to the best of his abilities? He would have to improvise, of course. The fire would have left the parts badly damaged. How about nails for fingers, for example? Of course, this is quite a crazy idea. It doesn't really explain why Freddy has mini versions of himself growing out of his body, or the significance of that damn word. But this does look to be an equally crazy and terrifying game, so who knows? We've talked quite a bit on what the game could possibly be about, but when and where would it possibly be set? When is quite difficult to answer, especially given the timeline of the previous games. Chronologically, the story's timeline started with the second game, then the first, and finally the third. However, going on what I talked about previously, playing the victim or a witness to the bite of 87, this could put the game anywhere between all three and even beyond. Quite a big gap and not easy to whittle down with the little information we have. A lot of people have assumed that given the numbers hidden in the website source code, it will happen around the time of the bite itself. This incident most likely occurred during the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 2, the day after Night 6. During Night 6, Phone Guy explains to Jeremy Fitzgerald, the character you play, that the animatronics had been acting up, and it was Jeremy's job to keep an eye on them during the upcoming day shift.
We have one more event scheduled for tomorrow, a birthday. You'll be on day shift. Wear your uniform. Stay close to the animatronics and make sure they don't hurt anyone, okay?
Where this game will take place is also tough to answer. If it were to follow the same format as the previous games, one would assume the story to take place in yet another office, whether it be part of a pizzeria, a horror attraction, or otherwise. However, if the game is set in somebody's dreams, the location could change each time, becoming more decayed and disturbing as each night passes. You may start in the first pizzeria that existed, Fredbear's Family Diner, before moving on to the bigger pizzerias and finally the horror attraction. Now, to refer back to my cuckoo theory about this being part of Scott's nightmares, what if the location was set in somebody's house? If we take another gander at the newspaper clipping from the end of Five Nights at Freddy's 3, we can see more text all around the main story, albeit very blurred. However, this isn't just random words crammed into an image to make it resemble a newspaper article. Scott actually wrote down some of his experiences with his nightmares while making the series. The top right text reads, "In real life, I tend to have waking nightmares, meaning that I walk in my sleep. One night I dreamt that Bonnie was in the hall outside my door, so I jumped out of bed and rushed to hold the door shut. I discovered that the door was locked and it filled me with dread. In Five Nights at Freddy's 1, when the doors don't work, it means something is already in your office. So when I felt that the door was locked, I felt like Bonnie was in my bedroom and was about to get me. Thankfully, I woke up." If Scott does base the fourth game on his own nightmares, we could possibly be playing the game in your everyday average house, with killer animatronics running rampant, of course. The final thing I want to discuss is the gameplay itself. Now, I'm assuming that this game will follow the same structure as the first games. You must survive all the way from midnight to 6 AM for 5 consecutive nights, with each night getting tougher. However, correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I know, Scott has made no mention of this game actually being called Five Nights at Freddy's 4. What if it isn't 5 nights and it's one long night, similar to the well-made fan game One Night at Flumpty's? This would tie in well with my nightmare theory. One long awful nightmare that the dreamer desperately wants to wake up from, but can't until they fought their fears. How poetic. This may not happen, however, as I'm sure Scott doesn't want to break the winning formula he has with these horror games. Another thing I think would be very interesting would be the ability to move away from the starting area and explore other rooms. This would work well with the idea of the game being based on Scott's waking nightmares in his house. Imagine the game starts with you in a bed in a normal looking bedroom on a dark night. You start to hear awful noises outside. They're trying to get in. You jump out of bed, grab your flashlight and make your way around the house, locking doors and windows to barricade yourself and keep these monstrous creatures of your darkest nightmares at bay. It would be awesome if Scott twists up the usual structure of the series like this, especially as I was finding the formula to be getting a bit stale by Five Nights at Freddy's 3. I also have my speculations as to whether or not this really will be the end of the series and its characters. I mean, sure, the image of Creepy Freddy has the words "the final chapter," but I'm sure I've seen that somewhere else. Plus, I wonder if Scott will finally give us all the answers we've been hoping for, such as who caused the bite of 87 and who it was inflicted upon, and who was the killer who fans know as Purple Guy. I'm also intrigued as to whether or not Scott will update his website with another image, maybe a Foxy this time? And what are the rest of the animatronics? And even if Scott does answer these questions, there's no reason he cannot create more mysteries with the upcoming fourth game. Anyway, that's enough theorising for me. I'd love to know what you thought of my ideas, and also let me know if you have any theories of your own in the comments section. And as always, please leave a like if you found this video interesting. It really helps me out, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye!